3 gems and a baby. What is this now? The 4th Greg flashback episode. And like all the others, per his agreement with Steven, it starts off with a song. It was a great song. Very slow and somber and emotional. And I just gotta say, the VA for Greg, I really like his voice better when he's doing slow, somber songs than when he's doing upbeat rock ballads, which is weird because he's a rocker. Anyway, this episode, it's all about how Steven and the Gems and Greg are all snowed in at Steven's house. There's a big snowstorm outside, and Steven comments that he's never seen a snowstorm like this, to which the Gems point out that he actually has. He just doesn't remember it because he was so young. That when Steven was only a few months old, a snowstorm like this one occurred. And that's right, we're getting a story about baby Steven. There is such a long period of time that we haven't seen even hinted at in any of the previous flashback episodes. It was so nice to see one of those time periods finally realized. Greg is noticeably about the same age that he was in the video from Lion 3, and he clearly has no idea what he's doing with a baby. I mean, he's making it work, he's using Vidalia's house while she's out of town, and he's like managing to feed Steven and stuff, but that's actually what the song was about. He just wasn't ready for this, and it's not something that you can really get ready for. It's something that you just have to live up to once it comes along. And it has a double meaning here because Steven's also a gem, and even though at this point they don't seem to think that he's going to manifest any gem powers, the situation is still odd. Rose disappeared to bring Steven into existence, and that's not something that human women do when they give birth. It just isn't. So from Greg's perspective, Steven's existence brings that weight with it, and it's something that has colored this entire situation with a layer of sorrow, much like if Rose had died in childbirth, for example. And then you have the Gems on the other side of the spectrum. They never expected Rose to disappear at all because they don't just die. Gems, the existence of gems, don't just end. And so they're still trying to cope with the fact that Rose is gone. And it doesn't help that they don't really seem to understand that Steven is a separate entity from Rose. Out of the 3 crystal gems, the one that is most insistent that Steven is a different person is Garnet, but we see later in the episode that even she is immediately convinced that Steven might be Rose when the instigating factor of this episode occurs, because as they are giving gifts to Greg, trying their best to be part of Steven's life, despite the fact that none of their gifts are anything that he could use yet, Steven's gem glows for a very brief period of time, and now everyone's convinced that he's Rose again, except for Greg. And absolutely sure that Greg isn't what Rose needs right now, the Gems kidnap him and steal Greg's van. So that means that Amethyst's kidnapping behavior back in On the Run was learned from the others. That's good to know. It's really interesting to see how each of the individual crystal gems approaches trying to get Rose to turn back to normal. Amethyst is convinced that Rose just shapeshifted into Steven, so tries to convince Steven to shapeshift back. When that fails, Garnet points out that no, Rose fused with Greg. This was her way of fusing with Greg. So Steven's a fusion, and Rose should be able to defuse and turn back into herself, and it's okay, Greg's not around now. It's just them. She even defuses into Ruby and Sapphire to remind Rose of how it works, which I'll get back to in a second. Meanwhile, Pearl is convinced that Rose is just stuck inside the body of Steven, that she's being held inside her gem by Steven's body, like Lapis was being held inside her gem by being stuck in the mirror. And that if she just removes Rose's gem from Steven, that Rose will be able to reform, which is either just wishful thinking on her part, or she doesn't know that Steven and Rose can't exist at the same time, that it's not that simple. But either way, even though she does still seem to believe that Rose could come back if her gem weren't in Steven, she knows that this is what Rose wanted. So she can't remove Rose from Steven. She can't bring herself to do it. But when Garnet defused into Ruby and Sapphire, Steven's reaction, seeing Garnet disappear, someone he knows, disappear and be replaced by 2 strangers, seeing him freak out when that happened, it kind of clicks for Garnet that this isn't Rose, it's a different person. And as the new leader of the Crystal Gems, she makes the call that as dedicated as they used to be to Rose, now they have to be that dedicated to this new person. They have to be that dedicated to Steven. And it was a very sweet moment, and meanwhile Greg's been chasing after the van. It was very funny, and he catches up and they have their own little moment. Overall, it was a very interesting flashback. I really enjoyed it. But honestly, it didn't really tell me anything that I didn't expect it to, which kind of let me down a little bit, I think. I'll try to explain what I mean. Each of the reactions of the gems, each of the different ways that the gems tried to get Rose to come back were very interesting, but knowing what we know now about their characters, none of it surprised me. They didn't really do anything that shook up any dynamics. I mean, that's good. Everybody was perfectly in character, and I definitely liked seeing this period of time, don't get me wrong. It's just, aside from finding out that Steven's gem glowed at some point before Gem Glow, and that the gems at some point kidnapped him from Greg, things that we didn't need to know to enjoy the show, this episode didn't really teach us anything that we didn't already know about any of the characters. Overall, it felt kind of like a fluff piece, which is fine. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that. It's just season 4, and I've been defending season 4 for this so far, but the criticisms are valid. So far, season 4 hasn't done much to add to the story. We've gotten introductions of new characters, things have made an impact on the characters, and things have developed, but not nearly as quickly as things have in past seasons, and we've gotten nothing at all so far this season that has expanded the overarching story of the show, the Crystal Gems versus Homeworld. So while this episode was interesting, it not being particularly informative just compounded the issues already present in season 4. Again, I did like it. I think it's still a good episode. I think it was a significantly better episode than Onion Gang, for example. I guess I'm just saying that at this point I feel like the writers need to progress the overarching plot. That's something that needs to happen, and I'm starting to wonder why it's taking so long. I also want to mention that I had this really weird feeling throughout the entire episode, and it took until the episode was almost over to realize it was because the gems were in older regenerations but being animated in the newer art style, and it was kind of putting me off without me realizing it. Once I realized it, it stopped, but it was just an interesting observation I wanted to share with you guys. All of that said though, guys, what did you think of this episode? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below. Either way, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.
Baby, please. I'm trying to talk to Rose.